Happy Friday, everybody. It's March 20th, 2020. Today, I woke up feeling pretty stiff and achy, kind of like all over, but mostly in my back and my rib cage. So I figured that this morning we would do some chest openers, some spinal mobility, and just get things kind of flowing on a flexion and extension level, as well as some lateral movement and rotation. So that's what we're going to do. Hopefully it brings in some breath for everybody as well, just getting our rib cage up and moving and helping our diaphragm flow a little better. Should be like a really nice support for breathing, which, as we all know, is an awesome thing to do. So let's get started. Find a tall, comfortable seat. As per usual, if you want to sit cross-legged, make sure that your butt is higher than your knees. That might take some pillows. So pop down like this. I often like sitting the way I started, but we'll start here today. All right. Get settled in. Notice where your breath starts going naturally. I feel mine kind of filling up my torso here first, right in the center. You can use your hand and kind of feel where you're filling up. I'm going to start to slowly bring my intention towards filling my belly first. To bringing that breath back up into middle of my chest, just below my sternum, bottom of the rib cage. Filling my belly first and then letting it fill here. And I'm just noticing how this feels, the air pushing out in the front of my body, as well as the sides of my body and the back of my body. And I'll start bringing that air all the way up to my chest, so filling my belly, lower rib cage, upper rib cage. Exhaling fully, letting the air fall out, the opposite order of how it filled up. So exhale, chest, lower rib cage, belly. And as I'm doing this, I'm just checking in, seeing if I can bring air into all the parts of my torso. And I've been doing this practice for quite a few years, so if you're finding that there's an area where you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, air does not go there, that's fine. Just see if you can start to think about breathing into those spaces. While I'm doing that, I'm just noticing any areas that it's particularly tough for me to breathe into. So right now, I'm having a little bit of trouble filling like about at this level in the back of my chest. It just feels stuck and angsty. So while I move through this practice, I'm going to be focusing a lot more of my attention there. And if you notice an area lower or higher, you can bring your attention to that spot while we move through this. So with that same kind of belly breathing in mind, thinking about expansion, lower and then letting it rise up, I'm going to start to arch my chest towards the front, tipping my head back on the inhale, and exhale, rounding backwards. There's a spot right in the center, right where my sternum is, that I'm pushing through to the back wall. Breathing in Do this a few times. Ooh, got a little crack out of my sternum on that one. And then try switching it. Exhale, pushing forward. And inhale. Breathe like you're breathing through your spine. See which one you like more. Toy around with that. And then come back to a neutral spine, and we're going to start doing the same thing but side to side. So I'm going to think about lifting up like there's space between each and every vertebrae, all the way up from my sacrum, in between my hips, to the back of my neck. And then I'm going to lean over to one side. And only go as far as you can go without feeling like you're crunching the side that you're leaning into. And then breathe into the side that's opposite that. Like I'm going to fill a balloon right here. If it helps to put your arm down, you can put your arm down. Now try it with one arm raised up. Not cranked up like you're leaning over, but just lightly raised up. See if you can get that breath all the way to the upper side of your ribs. You can look up at your hand if you want to bring in a little bit of a cervical spine twist, that upper spine. You can gaze forward if you want. I'm going to lower my hand. And just notice the difference. How does the right side for me, but the side you didn't lean into, feel, the side you leaned into, feel compared to the side that you just opened up? And just sit tall again for a moment and be aware of both those sides. Be aware of their differences. Still using that belly first and then climbing up the spine, breath from the beginning. We'll do the same thing on the other side. Being mindful to not crunch in and close up all that space we just found on your left. For me, it's the left. If you picked the right to start with, that's fine. And then I'm going to lift the arm up really lightly. See, my arm's pretty loose. I'm not flexing it really hard or gripping it much. I'm just letting it lazily rise up. I'll let it go a little higher and start breathing right up in here. And I'm noticing this side is a lot more difficult for me than the other side. My right side feels more compressed. So I'm going to take a moment longer to breathe into this side than I did on the other one, because that'll help me feel balanced. When we're doing anything bilaterally, I invite you to do the same. You don't need to follow along with just what I'm doing. Get to a point where both sides feel just about even to you, and that might mean lingering on one side longer than another. Often it will. Roll the shoulders back, kind of wiggle around a little bit, and again, just check in. How do both sides feel? You can already notice that it's easier for me to bring my breath up higher. I was feeling stuck right in here, mostly towards the back. And my breath is moving there better than it was when we started. So now that we checked in on that, we're going to move into some of those twists. So just recheck your seat, make sure you're comfortable. If your low back's feeling a little achy, You can get out of this position for a moment and just kind of shake it out, or you can put another pillow underneath you and get a little more height. Just be as cozy as you can. This is not a no pain, no gain situation. We can have all the gains with no pain. And again, I'm going to breathe up tall, thinking about space between each vertebrae. Like there's a string drawing me up in the center of my head. I'm going to turn with the middle of my spine first, towards the right. I put one arm on my leg to help with that twist. I'm not cranking over, I'm just resting it here. See, I can lift on and off. I'm letting this arm come back and around, opening up in the shoulder, and then turning my head. If you're feeling any discomfort, see if you can shift back towards the front of the room a little bit and lessen that discomfort. And then slowly you can start easing your way a little deeper. But only go so far as you can go naturally and comfortably and keeping up that breath. From the belly first, climbing up the spine, thinking about space between each vertebrae. I even like to kind of come out of it a little bit. And then I shift back in some more on an exhale. If staying more stagnant feels good to you, staying still and getting in deeper gradually feels good to you, do that. I like those little micro motions. So I'm going to do that instead. And I'm going to come back out because I feel about done and ready. If you'd like, you can linger on that side a little longer. When you come out of it, pause in that neutral spine for a moment again, and just reflect. Notice what's happening. Also notice your shoulder a little since we opened that up in that twist. Just pay attention to how this feels. Does it feel like you have space, or did that feel a little tender? Just something to take note of for the rest of the day. And we'll do the same on the other side. So I'm going to start my twist from mid chest, my thoracic spine, and then I'm going to shift a little lower using that hand to just gently guide me over, and then I'm going to open up, palm facing forward as it reaches out to get an external rotation in the upper arm, and place it behind me, breathing tall. This side twist is a little tighter for me. I feel that restriction again right in this area. This is for sure my tight spot, upper right side. So I'm going to be a little gentler on this side than I was on the other, not turn quite as far. When I give it some time, I find that I can sink a little bit deeper. So I'm inviting myself to do that. But again, I'm not cranking over. We don't want to force ourselves into a further twist. We just want to let it happen if it's there to happen. I'm feeling like I'm nice and balanced, so I'm going to come back out. Now that I've done those, well, first I'll check in. Just stay still, see what I notice. And some of the tension in this side is definitely dissipated, not all of it. And I'm just going to wiggle around some now. As nice it is to have somebody kind of cue you through movements. One of the things that I try and emphasize the most with my clients and anyone that I talk to about their health, mental, physical, all of it, is to check in with you and check in on what you need and allow for some kind of intuitive movement to come in. So if that looks like what I'm doing, great. If for you that means you kind of want to like stretch it out and sort of roll around, go for it. That's awesome. All of us are going to feel a little different. So in any class you take, any movement class you take, I encourage you to check in with what you need and give yourself time to do that. So I'm going to move my pillows out of the way and I'm going to shift into tabletop. And when I go into tabletop, I'm going to be pretty careful to not push in with this part of my hand. I'm going to push in with this upper part of my hand. My fingers, my thumb, this arch like the horseshoe that's at the top. So I give a little space in my wrists so I'm not load bearing right onto them. And that can take some practice. I'll make another video that cues that pretty well. From this space, I'm going to do that same thing. I'm going to round down. We know this is cat-cow. And push up. I'm going to go to the side, letting one elbow drop and then the other. And then I'm going to push back into child's pose. While in child's pose, you can kind of wiggle through your hips a little bit. You can turn to look under one arm or the other. Or just let your back kind of relax down to the mat. For some people, your knees might be a little wider than your hips, and for some, they might be right in line. Either way is fine. Do what feels good to you. And then we'll slowly drag and kind of roll up. Back into a tall seat. You can go back onto the pillow or you can get on your knees again. I'm just going to switch it up and go to my knees this time so I don't have to fuss with the pillows. I'm going to check in, see how my spine is feeling. I'm noticing that my breath's already a lot easier. So we're just going to do a couple more things before we close out. And you can stay seated for this or you can stand up. Either way will work. I will stand up because I haven't done much of that today. And just get a nice comfortable stand if you are standing. And again, you can stay seated for this one. You're just going to reach up and overhead, hands kind of facing each other. Drawing up very slowly and check to see that your rib cage isn't moving here. You don't want to do that number when we lift up. You want to keep a very neutral rib cage, okay? So rising the arms up overhead. I'm just going to focus on breathing. Just like when we did those side bends, I'm going to focus on breathing right here, right under my armpit in the rib cage, on both sides, straight up. Watching that your shoulders aren't all hugged up next to your ears. Give them some space. If that means that you bring your arms out a little wider, that's totally fine. We just don't want this crunch up in our necks. So shoulders nice and down, breathing just below the shoulder blade, just below the scapula. And then we'll tip over to one side. the next. With any flow of your breath you'd like, feel into this intuitively and see what makes sense to you. Sometimes I like to do the tip on an inhale, and sometimes it feels better to me to do the tip on an exhale. And I'm just going to kind of go back and forth until I feel like I've gotten what I need out of both sides. And again, linger one side a little longer to the other. That's fine. Each time I notice I can get a little bit deeper. Then arch back, starting from mid-chest, tip back. So you're not dumping into your low back here. We don't want that. Just a subtle tip of the upper chest. And exhale, arms down, let your chest come back to neutral. Shake it out. Maybe bounce a little bit. I always love a good bounce. Feels good. Shakes out my calves too. Wiggle out the arms. Come back to where you were sitting. Check in and see what you find. I'm noticing that my breath is feeling much freer than the beginning. This side is getting pretty loosened up. There's a tiny little bit of a kink left, but those tip overs really took care of most of it for me. So this was an effective one for me. I hope it was useful for you as well, and I will check back in tomorrow. Hope you're feeling good. Happy Friday. Easy breathing. Talk to you later.